Sarah Miller gently squeezed her sleeping son Tommy's hand as she rose from her economy-class seat. The dim cabin lights of the red-eye flight to Seattle cast soft shadows across the 4-year-old's peaceful face. His beloved stuffed elephant, Mr. Trunk, lay securely tucked under his arm, the last gift from his father before he walked out on them 2 years ago. The gentle hum of the airplane engines provided a soothing background to the quiet cabin, where most passengers had drifted off to sleep during the late-night journey. "Excuse me," she whispered to the elderly woman sitting in the aisle seat, who smiled understandingly as Sarah carefully stepped past. Making her way to the bathroom, Sarah caught a glimpse of her tired reflection in the mirror. At 28, the past few years as a single mother had etched fine lines around her eyes, but hope flickered in them tonight. The email promising a job and affordable housing in Seattle seemed like the answer to her prayers after months of struggling to make ends meet in Chicago. Her hands trembled slightly as she splashed cold water on her face, trying to calm her nerves about the big move. The fluorescent lights in the tiny airplane bathroom highlighted the worry lines on her forehead. Sarah had spent countless nights debating this decision, wondering if she was being reckless by uprooting their lives based on an online job offer, but the promised salary was triple what she made as a waitress, and the included housing would finally give Tommy the stability he deserved. She took a deep breath, straightened her wrinkled blouse, and attempted to smooth her auburn hair, which had become disheveled during the flight. When Sarah returned 5 minutes later, she stopped short in the aisle. A man in an expensive charcoal suit occupied the previously empty window seat next to Tommy. He was hunched over, his strong hands moving swiftly across her son's airline safety card with what appeared to be a pen. Tommy was wide awake now, watching with rapt attention, his small face illuminated with curiosity. The sight of a stranger so close to her son sent immediate alarm bells ringing through her mind. "I'm sorry, but what are you doing?" Sarah's protective instincts flared despite the man's well-groomed professional appearance. He looked up, and she found herself staring into the kindest brown eyes she'd ever seen. Something about his gaze made her anxiety begin to subside, though she remained cautiously alert. "Oh, I apologize," he said softly, straightening up. "I'm James. Your son woke up while you were gone and was a bit anxious. I noticed his elephant and offered to draw him something to help calm him down." He turned the safety card over, revealing an expertly sketched teddy bear that seemed to leap off the page with personality and warmth. The drawing was remarkable, not just a simple cartoon, but a masterfully rendered illustration that captured both whimsy and emotion. Tommy beamed at his mother, his earlier anxiety completely forgotten. "Look, Mommy, Mr. James made Mr. Trunk a new friend. He says the bear is magical and watches over children while they sleep." The excitement in his voice made several nearby passengers stir in their seats. Sarah settled back into her seat, studying James more carefully. He appeared to be in his mid-30s, with slight silver threading his dark hair at the temples. Despite his expensive attire, a suit that she guessed cost more than 3 months of her waitressing salary, there was a shadow of sadness in his eyes that spoke of deep pain. His hands, she noticed, bore the slight calluses of someone who spent considerable time drawing or working with precision tools. "That's beautiful," Sarah said sincerely, her voice softening as she watched her son trace the bear's outline with his small finger. "Are you an artist?" James's smile faltered slightly, a flash of grief crossing his features before he composed himself. "I used to draw for my daughter, Lily. He paused, swallowing hard. She loved bears. They were her favorite thing in the world. The past tense hung heavy in the air between them. Sarah's heart constricted as understanding dawned. Before she could respond, Tommy tugged at James's sleeve, oblivious to the emotional undertones of the adult conversation. "Can you draw another one, please? Maybe a bear with a balloon?" "Tommy," Sarah started to admonish, not wanting to impose on the stranger's kindness, but James was already reaching for a fresh safety card, his eyes brightening. "I'd love to," he said, his skilled hands already beginning to sketch. "How about a bear at a birthday party?" For the next hour, Sarah watched in amazement as James transformed airline safety cards into a magical menagerie of bears in different scenarios, playing in parks, having picnics, flying kites, and even one wearing a superhero cape. Each drawing was accompanied by a story that had Tommy giggling with delight. Between stories, Sarah learned that James was a successful architect heading to Seattle for a major project. His firm was responsible for several significant developments in the city, though he spoke about his achievements with humble understatement. But it was what he didn't say that intrigued her, the way his voice caught when Tommy reminded him of a younger child, the empty ring finger that still bore a pale band of untanned skin, the gentle patience that spoke of someone who had spent countless hours entertaining a child. As Tommy finally drifted back to sleep, clutching his collection of drawn-on safety cards, James turned to Sarah. "He's a wonderful boy, so full of life and curiosity. Reminds me so much of—" He trailed off, then quickly changed the subject. "What brings you to Seattle?" "It's quite a journey with a young child." Sarah hesitated, then found herself telling him about the job offer she'd received through an online posting. Assistant manager at a new boutique hotel, with staff housing included. As she spoke, she pulled out the wrinkled printout of the email, suddenly feeling foolish about how desperate she must sound. "It seemed too good to be true," she admitted. "But sometimes you have to take a chance, right?" James frowned slightly as he took the paper, his architect's eyes scanning the details with professional scrutiny. "Sarah," he said gently, "I know every major development project in Seattle. I sit on the city's planning board, and I can tell you with certainty, there is no evergreen boutique being built on Harrison Street, and this email address, it's not from a legitimate hotel chain." The blood drained from Sarah's face as the implications hit her. They were airborne over Idaho, flying towards a city where she had no job, no housing, and only enough savings for a few days in a cheap motel. Her vision blurred with tears as the weight of her mistake crashed down on her. Tommy shifted in his sleep, clutching Mr. Trunk tighter, blissfully unaware of their precarious situation. "I'm so stupid," she whispered, careful not to wake Tommy. "I wanted to believe it so badly. What am I going to do?" James was quiet for a moment, his fingers absently tracing the outline of another bear on a safety card, the night sky outside the window reflected in his thoughtful eyes. "I might be able to help," he said finally. "My firm owns several apartment buildings in Seattle. There's a vacant unit in one of them. It's small, but it's in a safe neighborhood near good schools. You could stay there while you look for legitimate work. No strings attached." Sarah stared at him, torn between desperate gratitude and ingrained suspicion of anything that seemed too good to be true. "Why would you do that for us?" James looked at Tommy, then back at her, his eyes filled with a mix of pain and purpose. "Because 2 years ago, my daughter Lily lost her battle with leukemia. She was 4, just like Tommy. A month later, my wife walked out. She couldn't handle the memories. Sometimes life gives you a chance to turn pain into purpose." He handed her his business card, the embossed lettering catching the dim cabin light. "Think about it, no pressure." As the plane began its descent into Seattle, Sarah held the card tightly, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of hope. She didn't know it yet, but that red-eye flight was carrying her and Tommy towards something far better than the false promise that had lured them west. Sometimes, she would later realize, the biggest blessings come disguised as disasters. The cabin lights flickered on, illuminating the sleeping child and the scattered safety cards covered in bears, each one a small bridge between loss and healing, past and future, despair and hope. Dawn was breaking over the Cascade Mountains, promising a new day and perhaps a new beginning. The sun had barely risen when the plane touched down at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. Sarah guided a sleepy Tommy through the terminal, acutely aware of James walking beside them, his briefcase in one hand and suit jacket draped over his arm. Despite her instincts screaming that trusting a stranger was dangerous, something about his quiet strength gave her comfort. "My driver should be waiting outside," James said, checking his phone. "Let me at least take you both to check out the apartment. If you don't feel comfortable, I'll help you find a hotel." His offer was genuine, but Sarah noticed his hands trembling slightly as he typed a message. This wasn't easy for him either. Tommy, now fully awake, clutched his collection of bear drawings along with Mr. Trunk. "Mommy, can Mr. James draw more bears at our new house?" The innocent question made James freeze momentarily, his composed facade cracking to reveal raw grief beneath. A sleek black car waited at the curb, the driver professionally opening doors for them. As they drove through Seattle's awakening streets, Sarah watched the city emerge from morning mist. The Space Needle pierced through low clouds, while coffee shops began opening their doors to early customers. It was beautiful but terrifying. This city that had almost become the scene of her greatest mistake could now be their salvation. James's phone buzzed continuously during the drive, He ignored most notifications, but one call made him stiffen. "Sorry, I need to take this," he said, stepping out of the car when they stopped at a traffic light. Through the window, Sarah watched him pace, his face darkening as he spoke. "Is Mr. James okay?" Tommy asked, pressing his face against the window. "He looks sad like you did when Daddy left." Sarah hugged her son close, wondering how children could be so perceptive. When James returned, his professional composure had slipped further. "That was my ex-wife," he said quietly. She still has ways of making things difficult." The apartment building was in a charming neighborhood lined with maple trees. Children's bikes were chained to front porches, and the sound of a playground drifted from a nearby park. The vacant unit was on the 3rd floor, a cozy one-bedroom with warm morning light streaming through east-facing windows. "The school 3 blocks over has an excellent kindergarten program," James mentioned as Tommy explored the empty rooms. Lily was supposed to start there this fall. His voice cracked on his daughter's name. Sarah touched his arm gently. "Tell me about her." James stared out the window for a long moment. "She was diagnosed when she was 2. We tried everything. Experimental treatments, specialists across the country. Rachel, my ex-wife, quit her job to care for her full-time. I worked constantly to pay for treatments that insurance wouldn't cover. For 2 years, our whole world revolved around hospital visits and medication schedules." He pulled out his wallet, removing a worn photograph. A beautiful little girl with James's brown eyes smiled at the camera, clutching a teddy bear despite the tubes and monitors surrounding her hospital bed. "I started drawing bears for her during chemo sessions. It became our thing. She'd tell me what the bears should be doing, and I'd bring them to life on whatever paper I could find." Sarah's heart ached as James continued. "When we lost her, Rachel blamed me, said I wasn't there enough, that I chose work over precious time with our daughter. Maybe she was right. The day after the funeral, she packed her bags and left. The divorce papers came a week later." Tommy's delighted squeal from the bedroom interrupted the heavy moment. "Mommy, you can see the park from here." "The lease would be month to month," James said, switching back to business mode. "Take some time to think about." His phone buzzed again. This time, the color drained from his face as he read the message. "Rachel's on her way here. Someone at the airport saw us together and told her." He ran a hand through his hair, distress evident. She's not stable when it comes to anything reminding her of Lily, and seeing me with another child." Sarah immediately understood. "We should go. I don't want to cause any—" "No," James said firmly. "This is my building. She has no right to interfere. I'll handle this." But his shaking hands betrayed his uncertainty. A commotion in the hallway made them both turn. A woman's voice, sharp with anger, carried through the door. "Where is he? Which unit?" James stepped into the hallway, closing the apartment door behind him. Through the thin walls, Sarah heard the confrontation escalate. "How dare you?" Rachel's voice cracked with emotion. "Moving some random woman and her kid into what should have been Lily's home. Our daughter's been gone 2 years and you're already replacing her." "Rachel, stop. You're not thinking clearly. I saw the pictures from the airport. Drawing bears for another child. Those were Lily's bears. How could you?" Sarah gathered Tommy close, her heart racing. She'd been so focused on her own desperate situation that she hadn't considered the complexity of James's grief, or the ripples their presence might cause in his broken family. Through the door, Rachel's voice turned venomous. "I'll call the board. I'll tell them you're using company properties for personal—" "Enough!" James's voice held an authority Sarah hadn't heard before. "You lost the right to dictate my life when you walked out. I'm trying to help someone in need. Lily would have—" "Don't you dare tell me what our daughter would have wanted." The sound of something shattering against the hallway wall made Tommy whimper. Sarah heard James speaking more quietly now, trying to calm his ex-wife. She should leave, find a cheap hotel, stop complicating this man's already wounded life. But as she looked around the sunlit apartment, at Tommy's hopeful face, at the park visible through the window, she felt rooted to the spot. Sometimes, she realized, moving forward meant walking straight through the storm. The hallway fell silent. Footsteps retreated down the stairs, followed by a gentle knock on the door. When James entered, his tie was askew and his eyes were red, but he managed a weak smile. "I'm so sorry," Sarah began, but he held up a hand. "Stay," he said simply. "Rachel's pain is not your burden to bear. Sometimes helping others is the best way to heal ourselves." He set his apartment keys on the counter. "The place is yours for as long as you need it. I have to go to a meeting, but my number's on the card if you need anything." As he turned to leave, Tommy ran forward and hugged James's legs. "Thank you for the bear pictures, Mr. James. Don't be sad." James knelt down, meeting Tommy's eyes. "Thank you, buddy. You know what? I think I'm a little less sad already." After he left, Sarah stood at the window watching him walk toward his car. He paused at the park across the street, staring at the empty swings swaying in the morning breeze. Then he straightened his tie, squared his shoulders, and continued on, a man carrying immense pain, yet still finding the strength to offer hope to strangers. Sarah looked at her son, happily arranging his bear drawings on the floor of what would be their new home. Sometimes, she thought, the hardest storms bring the most beautiful rainbows. 2 weeks passed as Sarah and Tommy settled into their new life in Seattle. The apartment slowly transformed from an empty space into a home, furnished with modest second-hand pieces Sarah found at local thrift stores. Tommy's bear drawings, carefully framed in dollar store frames, added splashes of warmth to the walls. Each morning, they waved to James as he walked to his office building, visible from their window, his tall figure distinctive even from a distance. Sarah had secured a waitressing job at a busy cafe 3 blocks away, and Tommy was thriving in his new preschool. The rhythm of their days was beginning to feel normal, almost peaceful, but beneath the surface, complications were brewing. It started with anonymous complaints to the building management about noise from their unit, though Tommy was an exceptionally quiet child. Then came whispered comments from neighbors about inappropriate arrangements and special favors. Sarah knew the source, Rachel's influence poisoning the well. One rainy afternoon while Tommy napped, Sarah found an envelope slipped under their door. Inside were photographs, James at the airport drawing for Tommy, James helping them move in, James stopping to talk to Tommy at the park. Along with the photos was a note in elegant handwriting. The board of directors might find these interesting. Leave, or they will. Sarah's hands trembled as she stared at the images. Each captured moment looked far more intimate than the innocent interactions they'd been, twisted into something suspicious by the lens of grief and bitterness. Her first instinct was to pack their bags, but she remembered the look in James's eyes when he'd offered them this chance, the desperate need to transform his pain into purpose. That evening, a knock at the door revealed James, looking more disheveled than his usual polished self. "Rachel's escalating," he said without preamble. "She's threatening to go to the media with accusations about misuse of company resources. She's not well. Losing Lily broke something in her that never healed." "We can leave," Sarah offered. "Find another place." "No," James interrupted firmly. "Running won't solve anything. I've spent 2 years letting Rachel's grief control my life. It has to stop." He ran a hand through his rain-dampened hair. "I'm meeting with the board tomorrow. I'm going to tell them everything. About Lily, about Rachel's harassment, about why I needed to help you and Tommy. Whatever happens, happens." Tommy emerged from his room, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Mr. James, will you draw bears with me? I learned about pandas at school today." The simple request cut through the tension. James smiled, really smiled, for the first time since the airport. "Actually, buddy, I have something better. Wait here." He disappeared down the hallway, returning minutes later with a large flat package wrapped in brown paper. "I've been working on this during lunch breaks," he said, helping Tommy unwrap it. Inside was a canvas painting, a family of bears having a picnic in a park that looked remarkably like the one across the street. The detail was exquisite, each bear's expression full of personality and joy. "It's us," Tommy exclaimed, pointing to the smallest bear wearing a blue shirt like his favorite one. "Look, Mommy, that bear looks like you." Sarah's throat tightened as she noticed the subtle details, the mother bear's determined expression, the way she protectively watched her cub. And in the background, almost hidden in the trees, a transparent bear figure watched over them all, its presence more felt than seen. "Is that?" she whispered to James. He nodded, eyes glistening. "Lily always said guardian angels could be bears too." The moment was interrupted by angry footsteps in the hallway. Rachel burst through the door, which they'd left ajar. She froze at the sight of the painting, her face contorting with rage and pain. "You're painting for them now?" Her voice shook. "Those were Lily's bears, her stories, her world. How dare you give them to someone else's child?" "Rachel," James said quietly, stepping between her and Tommy, who had shrunk against Sarah. "Lily's bears brought joy and comfort. She would have wanted..." "Stop telling me what our dead daughter would have wanted," Rachel screamed, grabbing the painting. Before anyone could react, she swung it toward the wall. "No!" Tommy's cry stopped her mid-motion. "Please don't hurt the guardian angel bear. She's watching over us, just like your little girl watches over you." Rachel's hands trembled. The painting slipped from her grasp, but James caught it before it hit the floor. Tommy approached her slowly, holding out one of his original bear drawings from the airplane. "Mr. James told me about Lily," he said softly. "She must have been really nice to have such a pretty guardian angel bear. Sometimes when I'm sad about my daddy leaving, I pretend the bears are giving me hugs. Maybe they could hug you too." Rachel stared at the small boy, offering her the drawing, her anger crumbling into raw grief. She sank to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "She loved bears so much," she whispered. "Every night she made him draw a new adventure for them, even in the hospital at the end." Sarah watched as Tommy did what children do best, offer simple comfort in complicated moments. He wrapped his small arms around Rachel, patting her back like Sarah did when he was upset. "It's okay to be sad," he said. "My mummy says that's how you know you loved somebody a whole lot." James knelt beside them, gently touching Rachel's shoulder. "Helping Sarah and Tommy, it's not replacing Lily, it's honoring her memory. Remember how she always wanted to help everyone? How she gave her favorite bear to that crying kid in the hospital?" Rachel looked up at the painting, at the guardian angel bear watching over the happy scene. "She would have loved this," she admitted quietly. "She always said there couldn't be too many bears in the world." She turned to Sarah, years of pain and bitterness giving way to exhausted acceptance. "I'm sorry, I haven't been well. Grief does strange things to us," Sarah said softly, remembering her own dark days after Tommy's father left. "But maybe, sometimes, healing comes from unexpected places." As the storm outside intensified, 4 broken people sat in a small apartment surrounded by bear drawings, each bearing their own pain, yet finding something like hope in the simple wisdom of a child and the healing power of art. The guardian angel bear watched from its canvas, a reminder that love, once given, never truly leaves us. 6 months later, the Seattle spring brought cherry blossoms to the streets and renewed life to the small park across from the apartment building. Sarah stood at the window of what was now officially their permanent home, watching Tommy and James set up for the weekend art class they'd started together. Children from the neighborhood gathered every Saturday morning to learn drawing, their laughter mixing with the rustle of fresh leaves. The transformation of the past months still amazed her. After the confrontation in their apartment, Rachel had finally agreed to seek professional help. Her therapist suggested that teaching art to children might be therapeutic, and surprisingly, she'd started assisting with the weekend classes. Watching her interact with the young students, Sarah saw glimpses of the woman she must have been before grief hardened her heart. Sarah's own life had changed dramatically too. James had convinced her to apply for an administrative position at his architectural firm, recognizing her natural organizational skills from how she'd managed the art class registrations. Now, 6 months later, she was executive assistant to the entire board of directors, her salary allowing her to not only pay proper rent, but also start a savings account for Tommy's future. "Mommy, come look." Tommy's excited voice drew her outside. The spring air was crisp and fresh as she crossed the street to the park. Several easels were set up in a semicircle, with James demonstrating how to sketch basic animal shapes. Rachel sat with a young girl gently guiding her hand as she attempted to draw a bear's face. "Look what I made," Tommy said proudly, holding up his drawing. It showed 4 bears, clearly meant to be James, Rachel, Sarah, and himself, having a picnic under a tree. Above them, a smaller, transparent bear floated among the clouds, wearing what looked like angel wings. Rachel caught sight of the drawing and walked over. Her face, once twisted with pain at any reminder of Lily, now held a gentle smile. "She would have loved being the guardian angel bear," she said softly, touching the paper. "You captured her spirit perfectly, Tommy." James joined them, his hand naturally finding Sarah's as they stood together. Their relationship had evolved slowly, cautiously, both of them healing from past wounds. They'd had their first official date just 2 months ago, a simple dinner after work that turned into hours of conversation. Tommy had been delighted, declaring that now Mr. James could draw bears for them every day. "The spring art show is next week," James reminded everyone. "The children's work will be displayed in the firm's lobby. He squeezed Sarah's hand, including a special collaborative piece. The piece he referred to hung in his office, a large canvas where every child in the class had painted their own bear, creating a vibrant community of unique characters. In the center was a familiar guardian angel bear, now surrounded by love instead of loss. "I have something to show you all," Rachel said suddenly. She retrieved her portfolio from beneath one of the easels. "I've been working on this for months." She pulled out a manuscript with colorful illustrations. "It's a children's book about a little girl who becomes a guardian angel bear, helping other children find their way through difficult times." Sarah felt tears welling up as she looked through the pages. Rachel had transformed her grief into something beautiful, each illustration filled with the kind of love only a mother could capture. "This is incredible," she whispered. "The publishing company loved it," Rachel continued. "They want to make it a series. I thought maybe James could help with some of the illustrations, and Tommy could be our first test reader." Tommy bounced with excitement. "Can I help make up stories for the bears too, like Lily used to?" "I think she'd love that," James said, his voice thick with emotion. "She always said stories were better when shared." As the morning progressed, more children arrived for class. Sarah watched James move among them, teaching with the same patience he'd shown Tommy on that late-night flight that seemed like a lifetime ago. Rachel worked with the younger kids, her natural maternal instincts now helping others instead of drowning in loss. Later that afternoon, as they all shared lunch in the park, Sarah looked around at their unlikely family. Tommy was teaching younger children how to draw basic bear shapes, mimicking James's teaching style. Rachel was sketching new ideas for her book series, occasionally sharing a laugh with Sarah over the children's creative suggestions. James sat beside Sarah, his arm around her shoulders, contentment radiating from his smile. "I never thought I'd find happiness again," he murmured, watching Tommy. "After Lily, I thought that part of my life was over, but sometimes the best stories have unexpected chapters." Sarah leaned against him, remembering that desperate night when she'd nearly fallen for a scam, only to find something far more valuable than any job offer. "Life has a way of bringing the right people together at the right time," she said, "even if the path there is through pain." As if on cue, a warm breeze rustled through the cherry blossoms, sending petals dancing around them like pink snow. Tommy looked up at the swirling blossoms and grinned. "Look, the guardian angel bear is playing with the flowers." Rachel's laugh joined Tommy's, the sound healing and whole. "Yes, she always did love to dance." James pulled out his sketchbook, quickly capturing the scene, the falling blossoms, the laughing children, the two women who had moved from enemies to friends, and at the center, a small boy whose innocent wisdom had helped them all find their way back to joy. In the sky above them, he added a faint outline of a bear among the cherry blossoms, its presence a reminder that love never truly leaves us. It just transforms, like spring after winter, bringing new life to what seemed lost. Sarah watched him draw, her heart full. Sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as mistakes, and the hardest journeys lead to the most beautiful destinations. Their story wasn't perfect. They all still had moments of grief, of doubt, of healing, but it was real and it was theirs, complete with all its unexpected turns and beautiful surprises. As the afternoon sun painted long shadows across their little corner of Seattle, Sarah knew with certainty that they had all found something more precious than any job or apartment. They had found home, in the truest sense of the word. A home built not of walls and windows, but of shared stories, healed hearts, and bears drawn with love.